Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. Off to a slightly late start tonight, but man, I've been working like a locomotive, like a steam engine. By the way, speaking of locomotives, when I was in up in Michigan last a couple weeks ago at Northwood University, one of the guys who picked me up was from the airport. Was a student who was really into trains, and he was on weekends. He basically fired up this gigantic, awesome coal-powered steam locomotive and just rolled it around for a while. Said he had a business plan to buy 3 diesel locomotives, and he wants, as soon as he's got his eye on a gigantic, enormous steam locomotive, a big one. I think it's $1.5 million or something. But I thought that was such a cool thing, And he was talking about how you had to fire the engine, going up, getting ready to go up a hill, and keeping the steam consistent and stuff. I just thought the idea that somebody was playing around with an actual, honest-to-God locomotive was really cool, and I was surprised at how many people own them. There are a lot more out there than I thought. I think his name was Sheldon, Laura. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. Nice guy, very nice guy, very smart guy. And so there you go. So let's see. Needless to say, been a rough week here. Rough week for everybody with the Las Vegas thing. And there's simply no way for me to say what I'm about to say without sounding like the world's worst human being, and I just can't think of another way to convey the information. But we had prepared to launch a really fun and cool ad campaign about the zombie apocalypse, and Natasha shot video of me out at the range. We were out at the range for about 3.5 hours, during which I shot for about the 3 minutes that were on camera, and she shot the rest of the time. I think she shot 600 rounds or something. She's lost her mind. Honey, you've got to get this under control, baby. She's a crack shot, and I bought her a little .22 pistol. In any event, we were there. I was out on the range with an AR-15, talking about how the zombie apocalypse starts in Blocktober 2nd, which would have been Monday. And I wake up in the morning to get this thing rolling, and I find, the Las Vegas thing. So I think that had to come down a little bit, needless to say. But it was, it was just weird. It was weird. That coincidence was also strange, a little strange, that Monday was the first day that I wasn't working for the NRA. And Dan Bongino was taking over for me in the morning, and he was perfect. He was a perfect guest to have for that, former Secret Service guy. It was just tremendous analysis. But in any event, I hope we can start it tomorrow or the next day. We will absolutely have it started by Monday, but I'd like to get it done before then. The general theme of this is going to be that there's a zombie outbreak at YouTube, because YouTube is suppressing conservative videos, and we decided to go, hey, it's Halloween, let's do this whole zombie outbreak thing. And we got some really, just some very cool graphics. In fact, let me see if I have one. This should only take 45 minutes of dead air or so. I just want to know if I can remember where I put them. I don't know. It seems unlikely. Yeah, I think I'll give up on this while I'm ahead. You get to see them tomorrow. I'll post one of them to open up in the morning. So, I think it's just absolutely horrific. Needless to say, what happened there, and you just, I don't know what to say. We all three of us talked about it on 3 different episodes of Right Angle. So I guess you're going to get that aspect of it. I'm so tired of thinking about it. I'd really like just to, for a little while, think about something else, because it's just appalling. But the short form of what I talked about, I did it in a Nexus report. By the way, we do a Nexus report every morning now. The one great thing that the NRA experience taught me was that I could be in the chair for a regular time in the morning and a regular one in the afternoon. So every day now at 10 o'clock we shoot, or try to shoot, the Nexus report. I say try to shoot because we do one every day for members only. And some days the news is jumping and it takes a little while longer to get it up there. But the one today I thought was very good. It was trying to figure out how do you determine what's fake news and what's real news. I'll probably make that public tomorrow morning, I think. And then I was talking about this idea on the Nexus report, and it'll be on my right angle, which I don't think is quite out yet. Be out in the next day or two. I was talking about this idea of the shooter, and how bad is this problem? And again, it's virtually impossible to talk about these kind of things without just sounding absolutely callous and heartless. So I don't, certainly that's not my intention. I have nothing but the deepest sympathy for the people who went through this, and I sure don't want to do anything that sounds like it's trying to minimize rather the impact of what it is. But I wanted to have an approximate idea of how sick the society is. And because we're told an awful lot by the left how sick the society is. And I was just walking around thinking, everybody says these guns are everywhere. And I thought that's true. And anybody can get one of these guns. Essentially also true. And then it occurred to me, we're constantly talking about these things when they happen, and appropriately so. But if everybody can have access to these weapons, why doesn't it happen a whole lot more often? This is another one of those cases where you count the hits and never count the misses. You see spectacular, smoking wreckage from a plane crash, and you think, oh my God, I don't know if it's safe to fly, but, every morning you don't wake up and say, in the latest news, 40,000 aircraft landed safely yesterday. And so you don't have any perspective. And that's all I really try to do with this, or with anything really, is try to provide some kind of just general perspective. So I had the idea to think about if the American people were a product, and if a particular kind of failure of that product was one of these mass shootings, what level of manufacturing quality would we have? In other words, can we compare the failure of a human being, their catastrophic failure, when they go out and shoot people? Can we get an idea of what percentage of people do that relative to the general population? Now, I'd had heard about something called Six Sigma. The gist of it is that if you look at any kind of a distribution, you pretty much always get a bell curve. And needless to say, the middle of the bell curve is where most of the things are. And then there's a standard deviation, which is a sort of a scaled amount where you move one way or the other, depending on the size of the curve and the height of the curve and all that. So when you move to the right, let's say if you're trying to make things, let's say it's just height, the average height is in the middle, and as you move to taller and taller and taller, the curve goes lower and lower and lower. And the further out you move towards tall, the fewer number of people there are going to be. And one standard deviation is, includes another height, and then a second standard deviation is considerably taller people. By the time you get to 3 standard deviations, you're really looking at a significantly taller cross-section of the population. And so manufacturers use this technique. I'm sorry, I just don't often get a chance to just, block somebody on the first try. There you go. So the manufacturers have a quality standard called Sigma 6, or Six Sigma, rather, manufacturing. And what that basically means is, can you get a failure rate that's so far out on that bell curve that it is essentially zero? And Sigma 6 is a long way out there. Essentially, Six Sigma means if you manufacture a product to Six Sigma standards, you have products that work 99.99966 of the time. In other words, Six Sigma allows 3.4 failures per million units. 3.4 failures per million units. So I took that number and I took a look at 320 million Americans, multiplied it out, and the number came, I think, to 1,058, 1,062, something like that. So if we had 1,062 people not thinking about mass murder, but actually committing it, if we had 1,062 Americans out there shooting people, we would, as a population, we'd be a 6 sigma population. We'd have an astonishingly low failure rate. And that is a sense of the perspective on it. 99.99966% of the population, and in fact more, don't go and shoot things up. Don't go out there and blow people away. 99.99966% of the population. It's actually, as I say, better than that. Significantly better than that. So when you ask yourself, well, what can we do about this, or how can we stop it? There comes a point when you have to say, I don't know if you can. Let me rephrase that. It is unrealistic to assume that you will achieve perfection in anything. We've come as close to perfection as I think we can mechanically with the airline transport system in this country, where we have not had a large, a commercial-sized jet go down of one of the U.S. air carriers in the country in 16 years. Last time we lost a jet of any size was in 2001. That's astonishing. 30, 40,000 flights a day, I want to say, something like that. So when you look at each one of those flights as a successful product, the airline industry is extraordinarily, unbelievably successful in terms of their quality control. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be another one. And it doesn't mean that you can't say if there's another one, well, then there's obviously something fundamentally wrong with the airline industry. Because, at least as far as the safety is concerned, at what point does this become unreasonable? And Dave Big Booty, of course, has wins the internet for the day. He says he tries to get to 7 sigma because it's one higher. That's true, Dave. Excellent point. I think about the work I do. I realize it goes up to 11 sigma. Mine goes up to 11. But that's really it, right? I mean, we have the sense that anything that happens to us before we die in our sleep, surrounded by our loved ones at an advanced old age, anything short of that, at 80 or 90 preferably, or 100, is an avoidable catastrophe, and it's an outrage against God and man. And I don't think we have the right to expect that kind of thing. It's cold comfort, I know, to people who are victims of this, and that's an enormously difficult thing for me to have to come out and say. But sometimes I think people need to say something to put into perspective the hysteria and to show the unreasonableness of it. As mentioned on one of my other one of the first, I think it was the first Nexus report, the one I did Monday right after I heard the news, that, if you think about, well, what can we do to prevent these things? You say, well, if we banned all the guns and then I just stopped myself, it's like, stop right there, Bill, That is not going to happen. It's not a question of it won't happen politically. It is impossible. There's 320 million people and more weapons than that. They're not just going to disappear. You can't start from a place. It's like saying, well, let's sit down and design our economy with the assumption that all of us can fly to work using the wings that are on our back. It's just, you can't design a city that way. You could, but it wouldn't do you any good in the real world because it's simply not possible. So there it is. I think for me, the situation in Vegas reminds me that there are things that happen out there that are horrendous, that there's nothing that can be done, I don't think, to stop it. Apparently this guy had bomb-making materials in his house, although there's an awful lot of awful lot of rumor and unconfirmed stuff going around right now. But we try to protect ourselves, and we try to do everything we can to protect ourselves. And yes, I agree. But to expect that that nothing bad is ever going to happen to us is just not realistic. And I think it's a real reflection on the society in a negative way, and also in a positive way, in a good way. In a good way, simply because we've been so successful that that we actually think that we actually get the impression that that we have a right to live in absolute safety and absolute security, where nobody gets hurt, and nobody's killed in drunk driving accidents or dies of any particular disease. It's all assumed. It's I keep coming back to my friend Evan Sayet's term, the kindergarten of Eden. That's really what it is. It's a world that's so detached from the realities of the real world that it seems like Disneyland, and nobody wants to get hurt at Disneyland. So when that kid got eaten by an alligator, I guess it was in Disney World, who can imagine such a thing? But Disney World's in Florida, and so are alligators. And how often does it not happen? These are all the things I'm just trying to say, because people sure do get hysterical about this stuff. All right, so we're going to do I kind of feel real comfortable with this 90-minute show, maybe 90 in a minute, pushing to 2-hour formats. So let's get started.